Hey Casey, it's Katelyn. I'm really excited for week 2. You sent some beautiful images. This girl is stunning, and I'm excited to talk about how to make these even better. So let's start with. I know you said this was shot at 2.8, which it is, and which is awesome. I think one thing I noticed about the settings here is that you said it was an hour before sunset, so you're probably you know shooting this time of year. It's probably kind of dark. So instead of shooting at 1/90th of a second at 2.8, I would either lower this down, the 2.8, or increase your ISO. Your ISO can go up to 500 and you won't see a difference in your grain. So it'd be much better to increase your ISO just a little bit or lower your aperture since it's only one person than to shoot at 1/90th of a second, because what you're going to run into is camera shake issues. I mean, you're shooting with a 50 millimeter lens, which is which is great. And normally a rule of thumb is don't take your shutter anywhere close to what your focal length is. And so, 1/90th of a second is pretty low to be shooting in low light situations. So I would just watch your shutter, because you might run into some blurry images and you don't know why, and it's because your shutter is so low. But it's a beautiful picture. You don't have to send it in, but I would have loved to have seen what it was like straight out of camera, because I can tell you cropped it. And so something about composition is that you want your subject and the way you compose an image to make your eyes flow across a page. And so that's why sometimes there needs to be some negative space. And what I mean by that is there needs to be maybe some space above her head, because sure, her body fills the space, but it may look a little bit better if you let the frame come up about to right here, so there's some space for your eyes to really fit her in the frame. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes I say things that I'm like, Katelyn, that doesn't make sense at all. But so as far as just composing this image, I think probably don't have to crop in so close. Because right now I wouldn't say it's easy on the eyes, just because I'm trying to fit her into this frame, and it looks like she's barely fitting. Like her backside's almost off here, her feet are not cropped in, and her head's almost out of the top of the image. And so for a more even portrait and a well-composed portrait, you might want to allow the subject to have some negative space around them. So I hope that was beneficial. As far as editing and shooting, she looks really sharp and in focus, and sure, it's a little overexposed here, but that's normal when you're shooting natural light like this, so I think it's great, and I wouldn't change anything from an editing color correction perspective. I would just change the cropping. So, oh heavens, sorry. Okay, so let's look at this one. So when you're shooting at 1.4, this is something that's going to happen. There's not any part of this image that's tack sharp. And what I mean by that is right here you can tell that the focus is on her eyes and it's sharp. In this image, everything's really soft. And a lot of people will say, well, I like soft images because it's more romantic looking, or that's just my style. And that can be your style. Soft images can be your style, but you have to understand how to get tack sharp images before you can make blurry images your style. I hope that makes sense. Basically, I want you to be able to shoot at 1.4 and have crystal clear images, because that's possible. You don't have to get soft images like this when you shoot at 1.4. It just takes practice, and you have to know what you're doing. So when I shoot at 1.4, I make sure I'm in a very controlled situation. So the light isn't crazy, I'm not working with multiple people, and I can focus right on my subject's eyes. And if I recompose, I can do it really quickly in a really controlled manner. So if you're shooting with, I can't tell if this is Canon or Nikon, but Nikon, you can change your AF points, and that makes it easier to focus. Canon, you have to compose, or you have to focus and recompose, and that sometimes loses a little bit of the focus for when you're shooting really wide open. So basically what I'm saying is focus on the eyes and make sure you're locked into the eyes, because what happened here is that you clicked your shutter and your lens wasn't really focused on any part of her body. It was very softly focused, and so it's a beautiful image. She's gorgeous, and she's probably going to love it. But when it comes to blowing this up or getting a large print, you probably shouldn't allow mom to do that just because it's going to be a blurry image. So when you shoot at 1.4, only shoot at 1.4 if you know that you can really get a tack sharp image. If not, shoot at 1.6 or 2.0 because there's nothing wrong with those apertures, even if you're shooting with a 1.4 lens. So I hope this is helpful. Another thing to think about is just cropping. I notice a lot of your images are not cropped to standard crop dimensions. So if someone was to, you say, order a print of this, say they wanted a 5x7, they're going to have to crop it themselves because that's a 5x7 and it's going to get really, really close and crop out her arm. Say someone wanted a, I don't know, an 8x10, that would fit really well. But only for an 8x10 because a 4x6, you're going to run into the same type of thing. You got to try to fit her in there. So I normally tell people to crop to normal dimensions, but it's really up to you. It's all a matter of preference. So that's just something to think about. Let's go to the next one. We'll just crop that. It's so pretty. I like it. I really like this. I think, I can't remember exactly what you said here. Let's see what the settings were. 2.4, 1/8 of a second. Okay, so this is, wow, 1/8 of a second. Okay, so that's really, really, really low for a shutter. Most people would never shoot at 1/8 of a second unless they have a tripod, and so that's probably the reason she's not in focus. It is because you're shooting at 1/8 of a second at 2.4. So to fix this in the future, your ISO can be cranked up. If you're afraid of cranking the ISO up, I wouldn't be, because even if you have a little bit of noise in Lightroom, you can reduce the noise right here, and it works wonders. So it's much better to shoot more accurately and not worry about ISO as much, because 1/8 of a second is gonna you could potentially have all slightly blurry images because you're not shooting with a tripod. So I would watch that, because that you'll be surprised at how much that can change or affect your image. So shooting at 2.8 or 2.4 is fine, and I would just increase your ISO so that your shutter speed can come up to a normal amount. So if you're shooting at with a 50 millimeter, I really wouldn't bring your shutter below 80 ever. So 1/8 is really, really open. So that's just something to watch. I hope this is helpful. Just watch your shutter speeds, and I think you'll notice a big difference in the clarity of your images. So one last thing about this, she has some pretty dark shadows right here, and so when you look at this picture of her, what I noticed first are her cheeks because of those dark shadows. And one way to fix it would be to find more directional light. Another way would be to make sure when you're editing and you're adjusting the contrast and the shadows that you don't do it too much, because you don't want those areas to be super, super, super dark. Okay, I hope this helps, and I can't wait to talk next week. Bye.